So the PRD is kind of the first step when you're designing a product, because you need to understand what it is that this product needs to do. You need to understand what it is, what it's going to do, all of the design constraints that dictate where this design is going to go, what it's going to look like. Things like things that you wouldn't at first think about. How big is it going to be? Where is it going to be used? We talked about the explosive atmosphere thing. That's a big one if you're going to use it in an explosive atmosphere. Where is it going to be used? Who's going to be using it? Um, all of those things will point a design in a certain direction. And a PRD is good because it allows you to get that information down in one spot up front, because eventually all of those constraints are going to come out through the design process, but it's much easier to get it up front as opposed to try and start designing something and then backfill your way into constraints. So to have a PRD is good to get everything down so you understand what all the constraints are when you're beginning a design or before you're beginning a design. And it also serves as I don't want to say a checklist, but it serves as a way to, as you're designing, to ensure that you've captured all of the requirements for the device and you've incorporated all of those requirements into the design. If the PRD says it shall have a handle 1 foot long on the top, and you design a product that doesn't have a handle, well, then you miss the requirements. So it's a good place to get it all down in one spot. And it considers, like I said, a lot of things. How big is the machine? What are the environmental impacts of the device? Where is it going to be used? What are the ergonomics involved? Are there any functional parameters that need to be hit? And how are we going to hit them? It's good in that sense. It allows for like a holistic approach at a design.
Yeah, we have a template for the product requirements document, the PRD. We have another one for the software requirements document, because those are typically when you have software in a product, and that happens all the time now. The software requirements get split off from the hardware requirements a little bit. They obviously have to mesh, but but the software requirements are just a little bit different flavor to them, how you test them and everything. But yeah, we've got product requirements document template and the software requirements document template in Word format. So you can download them and start using them. And it's the style of the document that's kind of interesting, though. It's if you're doing a medical device, you have to have traceability. So we usually have a reference number, and then some poor guy has got to sit down and do this traceability matrix just to make sure that the requirement to do this got into the product requirements document. That's where it started. And then there's a design document. Well, which items in the design specification are used to handle that particular requirement? And then there are test protocols, and do they address the requirements? And then the test results. Have you proven that you meet that requirement? And you can imagine some gigantic spreadsheet called a traceability matrix. So that's kind of the very formal way of doing it. If you don't need to do that, you can short circuit that a little bit. And but when you're designing your test protocols and you're running your tests, you have to make sure that you really are addressing the spirit of the requirements document. I mean, some requirements you have to have a handle. You can look at it. Does it have a handle? Yes. Requirement met. So there's not much testing in that, but you just by inspection you can see that you've met it. But if it says that the product has to consume less than 20 watts, well, when you're running your test, you need to measure how much power it's consuming. If it says it shall not get any warmer than, or it shall meet some standard on temperature, like no part of the surface can be hotter than 42 degrees C. Well, then you've got to inspect and measure the surface temperature and the entirety of the product to make sure that you don't exceed that. So there's all kinds of it's a whole process getting through it. Some companies start with a user requirements document. So now you're talking about the customer. How's the customer going to use the product, and what's the job it's doing for the customer? And then from that, maybe you can go straight to design requirement or design specifications, or maybe then you develop this product's requirements because that user requirements need a couple of different products. Who knows?
And the other thing the PRD, I think, does well is, at least our PRD, it's kind of an exhaustive list of things to consider. You may not need certain things. Like there's a line in there for ancillary materials that will ship with the product. Well, in some instances, a product doesn't ship with ancillary materials, or consumables or any. A product is just the product, and it goes in a box, and there it is. But at the very least, you've considered it. You can specifically say, we thought about ancillary materials, and we decided we do not need them.
Right.
That's a design. That's a design parameter. It's just the null.
Right.
A
good example of ancillary materials: power cords. Right? You have an instrument that plugs into the wall. Well, does it need a power cord? I would think that you do. So, but you're shipping this product worldwide. So the reason that you want to think about ancillary material is now you're thinking about, oh man, we're shipping into countries where we've got 5 or 6 different potential wall plugs that we've got to mate to. Do you ship 5 or 6 different power cords? Or do you ship one power cord and let them go buy their own power cord if that doesn't do it for them? You answer those decisions up front because it's going to affect the design of the packaging. 6 power cords is a lot bigger than 1 power cord. So, that's why you need to consider that up front, and the weight of shipping. And like I said, the airplane's getting heavier and heavier, it's not going to get off the ground. But but thinking about that up ahead of time, getting it in the requirements document is important, because then designing the product all the way through designing the packaging, you'll have less iterations, because you've got to make room for 5 power cords. You've got to make room for this set of fittings that are needed to connect it to some plumbing.
And to John's point, he just hit the word iterations. You don't have to do a PRD. You don't. But if you begin a design with an idea and you charge down that road and you design 3/4 of something, and then somebody comes in, the marketing department or your customer, and says, that's great, but I would love to have this as well. Well, you've got a product that doesn't have it. So you got to backtrack, and now you're iterating. And then maybe you redesign, and then somebody else comes in with a great idea, and you got to backtrack and reiterate. The design cycle can go over and over and over again. What the PRD does is allow all of that stuff to be thought of up front. Now, that's not to say that the PRD can't change or be amended or have stuff added to it, which happens a lot. But
there is a revision box in the PRD.
Yep, exactly. But it does, I think, cut down on the iterations, because with an exhaustive list of things to consider, you're considering them up front. So I think it makes the design go a little bit smoother. helps it go through a little bit better because you've given that consideration to a lot of different things.
Yeah. Maybe you've invented something brand new and you need to build something just to prove that your idea will work. And then you can say, okay, now I'm going to turn this into a product. And but filling out the product requirements document and discussing, well, what can we sell this thing for? And will we need any ancillary material? And what environment is it going to be run? Is it going to be operating in? And what's the skill level of the people who are going to be using it? If you ask those questions, it's going to force you to do the market research and the human factors usability kind of research necessary to refine your product that you already know that you can build a product that can do this stuff. Now it's how is it going to do it? But you can do those first 50 iterations on paper instead of by building product and then saying, well, that's not quite right. Let's do this and now do that. So it does tend to cut down on the iteration. So, Mike says, yeah, you can design a product without a product requirements document. Also consider that that's the document that your team of engineers is going to use to keep everybody on the same page, right? Because now it's if you're just one guy building something in your garage, you're on your page because there is only one page. But if you've got 3 or 4 engineers working on it and you want them to be able to work independently and not have to meet every day to figure out, well, what did you do? Oh, I did it this way. Sorry. And keeping it on track that way, you kind of have to split the jobs up. The product requirements document is going to allow you to design the interfaces between this electronic circuit board and some other electronic circuit board. So you can have 2 different teams working on it.
Yeah, and even to expand on that a bit, the product requirements document serves as a means to communicate between the customer and the designer. Because sometimes the customer can ask for something and think that they've articulated it well. They've got an image in their mind, but it may not always transfer over to the designer. There can be a bit of a lag there. Yeah. So getting it all down on paper, look, hey, we're the designer. This is what we think you mean. And then you hand it back to the customer and they go, well, sort of, but no, cross this out, change that. This is what it allows customer and designer to get on the same page, as well as all of the different designers getting on the same page and staying there. It's a communication tool, really.
Right. It's a little like an FMEA. FMEA is a failure mode defect analysis. It's a kind of a process that a group of engineers would go through to figure out what can go wrong with your product, what's the risk that it's going to happen, and should we do anything to mitigate that risk. And not everybody likes to do FMEAs. Frankly, it takes a special kind of person to get through an FMEA. But that FMEA is going to be done. The only choice you've got is, are you going to do it with your engineers in your offices on a piece of paper? Or is your customer going to do it in the field with your product? It's going to happen. You can just get ahead of the problems, or you can be reacting to the problems. It's kind of same with the PRD. Yeah, those requirements are going to be, I don't know if they're going to be documented, but they're going to be understood. It's just a matter of when are you going to understand them? Up front, talking to everybody, or are they going to stab you in the back as you're trying to ship?